Good. Now we can finally start. So after some minor technical difficulties, I'm being joined by M1. Is that how you wish to be referred to?
Yes, I'm one. Hello. Hello, guys. Nice to meet you.
Hello, a warm welcome, please. It's been a good help to me in recent times. We're here today to talk about the history of orgonomics and what it could do for people in your life. Let me just. There we go. So, to begin with, I'm going to make a telegraph that I'm not identifying myself as a doctor. And if you are watching this curious about medicine, great, but do not take any of the things I mention in place of following your doctor's orders. Don't try and improvise treatments for serious diseases. We don't want to lead people into dangerous decision making. So, with
Absolutely.
that in mind, neither of us are doctors, I would assume.
No, I'm not.
Okay, good, we're all clear. Well, thanks again for coming. Our story begins with. Well, I'll let you take a good look at it. What comes to mind when you see this?
That is, that looks like a toilet paper roll. That's
Not
what comes to mind.
not entirely wrong. It's originally fashioned out of potato tin combined with cotton and metal, and we'll go into the reasons why. So,
Mm.
long time ago, we roll back the clock to 1920s and 30s in Germany as it was starting to go off the rails. There was
Mm-hmm.
a dispute going on between Sigmund Freud and Wilhelm Reich. Have you heard of those two?
Yes, I have heard of Sigmund Freud.
Does Wilhelm Reich ring any bells?
Only when I read the Wikipedia, but I don't know him too well to say anything else.
Yeah, Wikipedia is a bit of a hit and miss when it comes to how credible the information is. Well,
Yeah.
Wilhelm Reich took a critique of psychoanalysis and to explain why psychoanalysis had flaws and how he corrected them, that would require a few hours on its own, so I'm just going to give a very simplified version. Two flaws
Well,
was that one, psychoanalysis was studied only in one culture and it wasn't put into
mm,
different social settings and nationalities, ethnicities to see how it
mm,
worked. So it had a very narrow minded scope when it was put to the public.
yeah.
And on top of that, it left the origin of the sex drive. Is it a mental drive or a physical one? Quite loosely defined. And however
Mm,
carefully you read psychoanalysis, you could only walk away with the stance of somewhere between the two, which is not
mm,
particularly helpful for something that is, with such lofty ambitions and expecting so much of its reader.
mm,
So Reich began studying medicine and society as well, and he had like a huge array of skills. And usually,
mm.
imagine having a college or university application in front of you, and you're made to tick one or
Right.
two boxes. He reached for about six, then tried to understand the intersections between them. Now, for
I
a
see. I
proper
see.
understanding of that, I've been narrating The Cancer Biopathy. I'm on page 50 out of 70, and it's coming along quite well.
Yes.
Fantastic read, and if you want to get a clearer picture of Reich's early years and the fundamentals of his medicine, then that would be a good place to look. The
All right.
merciful thing is that for what we're talking about today, you don't necessarily need to know it. The comparison might
Mm,
be you need a license to drive a car, but you don't need to know how to build one from scratch.
that's true.
Yeah. So Reich challenged Sigmund Freud over this, and he ended up getting attacked off of Freud, and especially his wife, Anna. They denounced him to the Gestapo, and he made a narrow escape. He made his way over to where you are, I believe, Norway.
Norway, correct.
Yeah, he spent some time working in Norway in the late 30s,
Mm,
and
mm,
his Bayern experiments went very well. He began studying things microscopically and made a huge point of contraction and expansion as being fundamental to life, reproduction, emotions. And he even said that if you studied it carefully enough, the
mm.
origins of cancer happen to share a lot of the symptoms of fascism. Now, of course, there's a
Mm.
lecture given by a man who goes to Still Point University of Berlin that could explain that better. I'll be providing a link to that. But in
Yeah.
very brief terms, or else we'll be here all day, that was some of his statements. And his Bion research did receive praise off of Bronislaw Malinowski and Alexander Neal. However, for the most
Mm.
part, it was disregarded, misrepresented, mischaracterized, everything to that effect.
Mm.
So the irony is that twice over, the attacks that he got in Germany kicked him out. He was Jewish. I should have said that earlier. Scared him off just
Yeah.
before the Gestapo could get their hands on him. And then in
Right.
Norway, he fled in around October of 1939 on the last ship that was leaving. So he dodged two bullets by, skin of his teeth there.
I
And
see.
and the
Why is
very
it that people attacked him? Why did they
well,
dislike him so much?
it was a number of reasons. One is that in the way he talked about how to engage with his work, the cautionary tales, the sort of I'm not exactly sure how to phrase it. The double think or the lookout points you should look out for. This is how you spot someone trying to mislead you. This is why you
Mm.
shouldn't trust people at their word, including me. He tempered it with the right amount of humility. And
I see. Yes.
in that era in particular, and today, quite frankly, it was, a very dangerous message to allow somebody to be promoting. So part of it was
Yeah.
political. The other
Yeah.
part was that his opinions on sexuality and relationships, uh, they were very something you'd expect people to propagate in the 1960s with a flower necklace on. So to be
Mm.
saying it in the 30s, 40s, and most of the 50s was flying close to the sun, demonstrably.
Yeah.
It also it didn't run against religion. All right, if you read it carefully enough and honestly enough, it didn't contradict religious beliefs. But a lot of people got it into their heads that it did and took it as blasphemous. Now I disagree with that, at least in my capacity. But I'm not much of an expert on the Bible, so take that with a grain of salt.
Mm. Mm.
And he found himself fleeing to the United States in the early 1940s to do his work over in Maine. Couldn't, it was too
Mm.
polluted. He moved over to Rangeley. He was about 2 miles out from Canada. And he forged
Mm.
for himself I don't know if estate is the right word, but a research facility named Orgone, which is
Mm.
the name I give to my capitals in any Civ game I play, to my one capital, sorry. Any questions before we continue?
Is that how it ended up being called Oregon because of this?
How what, sorry?
Is that why it ended up being called Oregon?
Organon.
Yeah, Organon,
Yeah.
Organon.
Orgone was the word he used to
Orgon.
describe an energy that was unseen, as well as his branch of medicine, deriving
Mm.
from the term organism or organic. And in the
Mm. Okay.
case of Organon, yes, it was named after that, very much does what it says on the
Yeah.
tin,
Yeah.
which is a somewhat ironic term we'll be getting into. So, in
Yeah.
his research there, he got it up and running, and his research chiefly upon careful study of the human condition, he found that electromagnetism is a feature in the human body, which is objective science at this point. We are electromagnetic beings,
Yes.
hence why we can die from an electric shock, but we don't get
Mm.
affected by radio waves that swarm our brains and kind of scream into us, for want of a better description.
Yes.
So he decided to try and isolate orgone energy. It was not a terrible idea in of itself, but he found that it couldn't. He couldn't, as
Mm.
it permeated the universe. It was everywhere. And he
Yeah.
identified it as the creator of life when mixed with organic matter and water. So he then decided if it's electromagnetic, let's try to isolate it. We can't. Let's try to accumulate it, the next best thing. So what he did
Mm.
was similar to this. I don't know that he ever made any that were spherical shaped, tin, but he
Mm.
made boxes that you could sit into, somewhat reminiscent of a portable toilet. And you'd sit
Mm.
in there. And what you ended up with was a triple layer here, in this case, a quadruple of one and a triple of the other. It's three
Mm.
parts metal, so that's, let me see if I can get the hot potato, two potato right on this thing. It's outer
Mm.
cotton, then
Mm.
it's a layer of steel wool, cotton,
Right.
steel wool, cotton, steel wool.
Right.
And what you end up with there is you're looking at diamagnetic and ferromagnetic materials, that is, say, organic
Mm.
and inorganic. In the language of
Yeah.
electromagnetism, that will create a sort of one-way filter. You understand how a two-way mirror works, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So in the case of a two-way mirror system, you'd get energy brought in here, and then when it accumulated, it has nowhere else to go. So in a concentrated format, it spills out of this side. You can't see it with your own eyes, but there is an effect being done to my hand here.
Yeah.
And one hypothesis I drew is this. Do you understand how pain works on the physiological level?
Probably not as much as you. Can you explain to me?
Research from the London Pain Clinic indicates that when you feel a physical sensation, pain, pain relief, or just something neutral, the nerve
Mhm.
endings will generate an electromagnetic signal. That will make its way up to
Right.
your brain in the blink of an eye and come straight
Yeah.
back down with the appropriate instructions. So, this is just something as brushing, this is something as clawing, issue pain signal, and this
Hmm,
is
hmm.
the clawing has stopped. You can stop indicating the pain. The pain being to
Right.
motivate the personality to do something about it. Well,
Yes.
in the case of the organometer, my theory is that it sends out an electromagnetic signal with a very close resemblance to the pain relief response. So close, in fact, that your body can't tell the difference. It might be the equivalent of imagine somebody doing an extremely convincing celebrity impression when you can't see them, and it's basically just a 50-50. Is it the celebrity? Is it the great impersonator? And your
Mm.
body doesn't know, and it doesn't particularly care. So
Yeah.
we'll get a bit more into what I've experienced with it later, but I just want to cover the story of Reich at the moment.
Mm.
So, Reich continued his research in psychology, medicine, internal, external. He was a man of many, many hats.
Mm.
And
Mm.
Organon's research went incredibly well from the mid World War II to early 53, if I'm not mistaken. So he was
Mm.
making traction and he was getting interest far and wide, and he was even winning praise among people that could engage with it in a healthy manner.
Hmm, hmm.
Uh, I take it as it was almost a badge of honor on his part that he attracted naysayers who shouted him down, who mischaracterized him, who swiped at a concept of him and not what he was actually doing. And what
Right.
I touched on earlier is what I'm describing there, swiping at the concept of him, but not who he actually was. What comes to mind when you hear that?
Can you repeat that?
Um, what comes to mind when I point out that his critics would mischaracterize him and then they would deride the mischaracterization and not what he was actually doing?
Well, it just means that maybe they're jealous, or maybe they can't prove him wrong, so they just attack him for who he is rather than what he's working for.
Yeah, you're
Right?
not wrong. What I should hone in on is, as he pointed out in some of his research, like the cancer biopathy, among other books, like the mass psychology of fascism in particular,
Yeah.
highlighted that the symptoms of cancer ran parallel with the symptoms of fascism, and we're seeing that in this instance. People like a government that mischaracterizes something and then acts inappropriately on the mischaracterization, that
Yeah.
has a resemblance to how cancerous cells function.
I see.
That's one example, and we're not going to get into it fully because just time constraints, but you see what I mean.
Yes, I see.
Great. So then he attracted more and more negative attention from the government, who were throwing out some mutually exclusive, almost funny excuses for opposing
Mm.
him.
Yeah.
And he also created something called a cloudbuster, which I've been seeking to do as well, where he would, in brief terms, he would draw energy out of the atmosphere using a different, more sophisticated and intense type of what he called an aura, which could be thought of as a sort of conductor or attractor. Then he
Yeah,
would use
yeah.
a mechanism to convert the energy he had drawn. Then, upon
Mm.
converting it, he would send it back skyward to remove artificial effects of drought. Now, I don't have much to say on that. I'm just covering it a little bit to put a bit of it into perspective. I'll seek to address that
Mm.
in coming years, since chiefly I
Yeah.
focus on the medical side. And
Mm.
here's the bit that I never quite got over. He was
Mm.
approached at Organon by agents of the FDA. You familiar with them at
Mm.
all?
Yeah, I remember reading about it.
Yeah. for our audience, that's the Food and Drug Administration, which we're going to put this into
Mm.
context. Food and Drug
Yeah.
Administration is under the eye of the AMA, American Medical Association. So,
Right. Right.
although usually in the case of topics I cover, the AMA get their hands dirty and bring it to a close, in this
Yeah.
instance it was the sidekick, and I could get into why, but it's not that important in this instance.
Mm.
So the
Mm.
FDA delivered him a dictation. It had two
Mm.
stages to it, right? One was that the orgone accumulators didn't work, and the other was
Mm.
that Reich, his son Peter, and his friend Bill had to destroy the
Yeah.
orgone accumulators with an axe and then destroy them with fire damage so that they didn't
Yeah.
work anymore.
Mm.
Noticing a pattern there?
No, can you tell me?
Well, I'll simplify it a bit. Rule number one was orgone accumulators didn't work. Rule number two was they had to be destroyed so that they didn't work.
Well, that doesn't make sense. If they already don't work, then you don't need to destroy them.
Yes, FDA, zombie orgone accumulators are gonna come and get you. So Reich and possibly alongside Bill and his son Peter, that detail's a little bit hazy, but at least
Yeah.
Reich destroyed these things.
Yeah.
And following this, he was slapped with an injunction banning him from sending orgone accumulators across state lines, which
Mhm.
was violated by one of his associates who gave one to an FDA inspector posing as a buyer, which may or may not be grounds for entrapment. I don't know, and I especially don't know the law 1950s. I wasn't there. But
Yeah.
it sounds at least questionable, and if I were a lawyer, I'd take one look there.
Yeah.
So then he goes to court and he reasoned that the judge should not be allowed to make dictation because the nature of his work revolved around an
Mm.
unproven energy that the court did not have the authority to engage in.
Mm.
Because arguably, and you can take this a lot of ways, but orgone energy had a lot of parallels with chi, prana, vril, odd, or what is in Western cultures known as the soul, a spark of
Yeah.
divinity connecting you to the universe.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
I'm
understand.
I'm not fully in the business of getting philosophical, but uh, I could see where he was coming from with my limited knowledge.
Mm.
And in the case of his prison sentence, he found himself in jail for 3 years in very bad
Mm.
conditions akin to what Nelson Mandela experienced, which
Yeah.
exacerbated his pre existing heart and lung disorders, especially heart.
Mm.
And sadly, he died when he was almost due for release. And it has
That's very.
come up that among people in my sphere that the government killed him off with pills or something to shut him up, and I can
I
certainly
see.
see where they're coming from, but it could
Mm.
go either way. As he was 60 years of age, his health
Yeah.
was not stellar, and his
Yeah.
his cell was poor conditions. That is, granted, the FDA's fault. And
Mm.
use of the orgone accumulator in excess can backfire. There is such a thing as too much of a good thing. And in his
Mm.
case, he
Mm.
was very much overdoing it. He was also a heavy smoker. So, if I'm being rational, I think he more likely died of something other than murder.
Yeah. Bad habits.
Yeah, bad habits and cell conditions.
Yes.
I should make a distinction that I don't personally admire Wilhelm Reich in every way possible. Let's separate the inventions from the inventor. The
Yeah.
inventions I view great. The inventor, wouldn't want to be alone with him, would not want him alone around any children I was looking after, because I'm going to be
Mm.
perfectly honest, there were indications, judging by
Yeah.
some of his own written statements. I mean, that he even stated them was a bit of a shock. I'm not going to describe them, but they were
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. 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 I understand.
So, separating the art from the artist is of critical importance in this case. And from
Yes.
there, orgone energy largely fell into obscurity, sadly, but not
Yeah.
entirely, as it did generate some traction. Take a
Mm.
wild guess at who was partial to a use of the orgone accumulator in the 60s.
I have absolutely no idea.
Okay, it's a bit of a blind one, but I'll tell you. The correct answer is Bond. James
Oh, really?
Bond. Yeah,
James Bond.
Sean Connery was a regular user from his own admission.
Hmm.
Before we get ahead of ourselves, any questions you have revolving around what we've discussed thus far?
Not so far.
Okay, great. And in the case of the 70s, well, this didn't age very well at all. There was a scene in
Mm.
the movie Sleeper when Woody Allen took a girl into something similar to the Orgone accumulator, which got the
Mm.
unfortunate title of the Orgasmatron. Now, that
Oh.
comes from most likely some very dark and most likely deliberate decisions on the part of Hollywood directors. But it also
Mm.
comes
Mm.
from one of the misconceptions was that you were supposed to go into the orgone accumulator to get to get a sexual thrill. That's not true at
Mm.
all.
Yeah.
Now, the closest he actually came to saying that was this. People experiencing emotional trauma were, and again, don't take this as medical advice. This is just what he said. Were supposed to
Yeah.
get into the device in order to
Mm.
have it relax some of their muscles and release stress and tension from within them. And if
Mm.
they relax their system, shut their eyes, it would
Yeah.
give them a sort of electromagnetic balance, work things out in the
Mm.
unseen sector
Yeah.
to make them feel better. And a
Mm.
product of that was it made people who had experienced that sort of trauma better prepared to spend a night with their partner. There's a huge gap between what I've just described and saying you were supposed to go in there and entertain yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
So
big difference.
there's no truth behind that.
Mm.
Yeah, that's something akin to what Boris Johnson would have thrown up as an excuse. Don't know how familiar you are with UK politics, but trust me, it makes a lot of sense if you see him in action.
Yeah.
So from there, in the 1980s, Kate Bush's Cloud Busting came out on the radio, and
Mm.
it garnered a lot of attention. She's the one that made the big comeback from the Stranger Things feature, and it
Mm-hmm.
explored the shutting down of Organon from the perspective of Peter Reich, his son.
Yeah.
Then, in the case of the 80s, also, MD Heiko Lassik, who was a full fledged doctor with qualifications, and
Mm.
again, not medical advice, take it with a grain of
Yeah.
salt. I just got to
Mm.
say that to make sure I don't land myself in hot water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. No problem.
and truly, I don't want people playing Russian roulette with orgone devices. He got
Yeah. Yeah.
he got together 17 patients that were in the written off stage of the Big C. This was stage for go home and die, you're not going to last territories. And
Mm. Mm.
in the bulk of cases, he was able to get them beyond their expiration dates. So people that were due to die in, let's say, March were in
Yeah.
most cases living to see July. And in
I
some
see.
cases, people who were in the mortally sick
Mm.
stage are reported
Yeah.
to have made recoveries and needed continued support, but lived for decades in spite of
Mm.
this.
Yeah.
And, take it with a grain of salt, but Heiko Lassik's experiments are worth listening to and reading. And I made a video with me recounting them, like an audio book. So that is
Yeah.
available to anybody seeking. I'll link something. And in the 90s, BBC film producer John East made It Can Be Done, which covered some of the talks around orgone energy.
Mm.
In the 2000s, Reich's books became public, and when he was sealed away, his one of his wishes, his last wish as a free man, I think, was seal my work away for 50 years and release them to the public when they're more ready for it. And they were released in the 2000s to mixed but ultimately healthy acclaim in most cases, and
Mm.
interest began sparking back up. A fun fact is the first video I saw on on this subject was released in the
Mm.
2000s. I'll link that also. And
I
there's a
see. I
reason
see.
I have something of a soft spot for that decade.
Mm.
Sorry, I skipped over a bit. In the 60s, after Reich died, The
Yeah.
works of Herbert Marcuse and Erich Fromm inspired the hippie movement, which we mentioned briefly earlier. Well,
Yeah.
arguably, a lot of the free love and expression and fight the power philosophies of that era were heavily Reichian inspired, even if it wasn't known to the bulk of hippies who were at the forefront of the movement. You could
Mm.
make the point that they took many influences from Reich.
Yeah.
So we skip back to the 2010s, and there isn't a lot to say in that instance. Then we come to the 2020s. That's when I got my hands on it and began to
Mm.
experiment with it. And we'll start to move into my personal experiences shortly. Have you any follow up questions thus far?
Is that when you first found out about it in 2020?
Yeah, 2020, when I was during lockdown, I was bored. And the irony is, I was thinking of somebody who abused me when I was 14, and I did recall, wait, didn't he once
Mm.
mention he liked that channel with all the like the world mysteries? Well, let's have a look at that. So I clawed something out of that experience, I guess.
Mm.
And after flicking through a few, I saw the video giving an extremely simplified, like a 3 or 4 minute synopsis of the history of Orgone. And I
Yeah.
thought to myself, well, hang on, that sounds chillingly believable and also replicable. How hard could it be to piece
Mm.
that together? I mean, if I can make a loaf of bread, if I have that budget and I have that competence, and I do, can I do this?
Mm. Mm.
So
I
from
see.
so from there, my mate and I made one that was fully literally held together with duct tape.
Mm.
Any other questions?
People considered it obscure, right? So when you first watched the video, didn't you have like any skepticism towards it?
Yeah, I didn't fully believe it within that second, but I was largely encouraged by it. And as for the feeling, like the instinct to read deeper, I've never
Mm.
before or since had instincts of mine tell me to look into something so strongly. And I didn't
I see.
know, like before I saw it, I didn't know that I had it in me to feel that amount of curiosity.
I see. I see.
It's a
I get it.
standout moment in my life, in fact. And
Yes, I
it's
get it.
true, I've learned gradually to be more and more cautious with it. We learn not to overcommit or to
Yes.
make promises, don't write checks
Yes.
with other people's money or with other people's
Yes.
blood.
Yes.
So we could move into my personal experiences, but I'd like to roll the clock back and go to just a sort of rapid fire round of the AMA and the FDA and the history of some of their worst moments.
Mm, mm.
So before we get into this, how much out of 10 do you trust that the American government is not hiding medical advances from us, whether life-saving or not, or, convenient?
I don't trust them at all.
So is that a 0?
Yeah, 0.
Okay, well, that's I'm not going to get into this in major detail. I'm just going to go a quick run through of some of their worst moments.
Mm,
1910 commissioned Abraham Flexner to create the Flexner Report, which
mm.
had such lines in it as, you know, I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but your age,
Yeah.
and I'd say that only to put this into perspective, that
Yeah.
non-whites had no place in medicine, and they were especially dangerous when untrained.
Yeah.
And as somebody who was looked after by a black doctor once, I can say that's absurd.
Yeah, it's absurd.
It also stated that, again, this is slight paraphrasing, but women didn't want it bad enough in the medical industry, and they didn't
Mm,
deserve a place there because they didn't fight for it.
mm. Yeah, that's absurd.
This being after the suffragettes had been screaming since the 1800s.
Yeah.
It also stated, oh God, brace yourself. It stated that chiropractic medicine had no value and would be unheard of in a few decades.
That's so stupid.
Yeah. I mean, it, I made a comedy about this in 2025.
Mm, mm.
I just didn't know what to say to that, It's so bad.
Yeah.
It stated that osteopathic medicine had no value and that it would contribute nothing to people's health.
Mm,
As
mm.
somebody who's had some massages to get my spine functioning normally again after dislocations, That's just
Yeah.
not true at all. I mean, for God's sake, massage has no medical value. It begs not to be taken seriously.
Yeah, it's helped me too. I
Yeah,
used to be an athlete. I used to get massages every weekend.
yeah. I mean, they're just so bad. You want to hate it more than you do, but you're too busy being in disbelief.
Yeah.
Also, osteopathic medicine, that can be characterized as working out. This has helped me more than once.
Yeah.
And, there's no putting the flex in Flexner. He was a scrawny man.
Yeah.
It made the statement that homeopathy had no value after the London Homeopathic Hospital had done a
Mm,
fantastic job of opposing the cholera epidemic that was opposed by John Snow, while the nearby
mm,
Middlesex Hospital had something like approaching 3 times the mortality rate, which was non homeopathic.
yeah.
And, that was just the Flexner report. George Simmons, who ran the AMA for a long time as secretary, lent into authoritarian policies. He couldn't prove this. Rumored sex offender abused his colleagues.
Mm,
It's probably true, judging by all the stuff that went on around it. Unfairly
mm,
challenged, was it Wallace Abbott, I believe? Abbott
mm,
blackmailed him by pointing out that he'd been faking his medical degrees. He made the claim he got a medical degree from the Rotunda Hospital of Dublin, of which is
mm,
not licensed to provide said medical degrees.
mm, mm, mm.
He shut down huge amounts of hospitals, and he also watered down the quality. So the quantity and the quality hemorrhaged under his watchful eye.
Mhm.
He poisoned his wife to the point of her nearly being committed for insanity or committing suicide. And
Holy shit.
the movie Gaslight and the term has its origin there. That's where the terminology originates.
Mm,
It's based on George Simmons doing that to his wife, who was played by Ingrid Bergman. Now,
mm.
I could go on and on and on. That covered about 15% of the things I could talk about, but honestly, I'm just not going to get into everything because, it's like drinking an
Yeah.
ocean. And once you've heard that, you've basically heard all of it. The only
Mm.
other thing I'll cover is that Maurice Fishbein took over from him. He failed anatomy in school. He libeled somebody who I think himself was a scam artist, but libel is libel. He propagated the chiropractic medicine has no value line. He never treated a patient once in his life. He even just looked like a sort of comedic villain. Look up a picture of Maurice Fishbein. You'll see exactly what I mean about looking like the dumb. He's like the dumb father in a sitcom. That's exactly what he looks like at best. Or the obnoxious colleague at work you don't want anything to do with.
Mm, mm.
Which, that's exactly what he was. And it was
Yeah.
a case of judge the book by its cover. He obstructed the Rife beam. I'm just going to cover this one because it is higher ticket than the rest. The Rife beam, in very simple terms, would use sophisticated understanding of sound, light, color, and the relationship between the three to
Mm.
exploit weaknesses and diseases. And Fishbein offered to buy the technology for a lot of money. When the offer was refused, he said that it had no value and would never sell and was worthless. And then he used underhand, dirty tactics in order to obstruct and harass doctors that supported it. He also
I
funded a
know.
lawsuit against Royal Raymond Rife, which, despite the fact that Rife won, the legal costs and the stress just destroyed him completely.
Mm.
I've been in a courtroom, right, and I've dealt with financial troubles. I think you know how. Please don't elaborate on it. And,
Yeah, yeah, I know.
financial troubles and experience in a courtroom will do things to you.
Yes, it will.
And I wasn't in there for committing crimes, by the way. I wasn't the criminal. So,
Understand.
from there, Rife faded into obscurity. I'm not going to get into that fully. He made something of a comeback, but blah blah blah. And that's the history of the AMA for you. I'm very much not going to change your opinion, but I might have put more names to the faces, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you
I
got
know
any
more
any
now.
follow up questions about the history of the AMA?
Not at the moment.
All right. One thing I'll point out is not to be all doom and gloom. They have made losses. Fishbean got what was the name? Who came before Fishbean? The one who poisoned his wife. Simmons. Simmons got shown the door when his wife beat him in court and brought him into disrepute. Fishbean got thrown out the door when he scammers sort of cannibalized themselves. He went up against somebody who was probably himself one of the very few. The irony is, Fishbean took out genuine researcher after genuine researcher. The one person he couldn't dethrone was an exploitative scam artist. So think Mr. Incredible in The Incredibles. The only thing powerful enough to destroy it is itself, in reference to
Yeah.
the Omni Droid.
Mm.
And then from there, they were found guilty for antitrust violations in the 1940s. Think about that. 1940s, guilty for antitrust violations. And after that comes the bulk of the opposition of Reich. Among other things, many. They lost a law. They were found guilty for antitrust violations a second time in 1990 when Chester Wilk, among others, beat them and they had to back down, by force. They stopped propagating over the chiropractic trade and they began to acknowledge it for what it really was. Only with a knife shoved up against their throat did they start giving us an honest answer.
Yeah, that's how it usually goes.
I know that caliber of people. So that covers it. We'll now move into, oh yeah, Life Extension Foundation. They threw a spurious lawsuit at that with something like near 50 charges. Kent and Falloon stood and stood and stood their ground, and eventually the lawsuit was dismissed with not a single charge landing. So I'm putting that out there to say opposition is possible and necessary.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll now move into my personal experiences. Just going to give another refresher. I am fully of the belief that I've helped people far and wide with these devices. To use it for benign, unthreatening, but still, hassle-some pain, I think is a good thing to do. I'm saying that in capacity as just a citizen. To use it for serious diseases, don't do it, okay? I'm not advocating anyone use this to solve really serious or life-threatening diseases and injuries.
Mm.
So, first things first, I assembled one, and when I was having episodes from PTSD, I stuck it on my chest and waved it around. Sorry, stomach as well. And I felt something hard to describe, like for that time in my life, especially between the stress of lockdown and other stuff that was afflicting me. Stress levels were very high, sort of contradictory numbness and worry at the same time.
Mm.
So I waved it about on my stomach and I felt kind of unfamiliar, detached, happy, or kind of light or floating. It could be described as odd, but not unpleasant. So I decided to get stingy with myself and say, look, you are quite attached to this thing. Let's file that one under a placebo effect and talk to some other people. So then I made my way to a then friend of mine who was suffering from post vasectomy pain disorder. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, for our audience that doesn't, it's when somebody gets a vasectomy and there is a 1 in 50 chance it feels like somebody, is hitting you where it counts all day, every day. And the doctors who gave him the operation said to him, "Oh yeah, did we forget to tell you? Yeah, we knew. We just didn't bother to inform you you were playing Russian roulette there." I think that if I was there, the doctors would have been very pleased that there were medical experts nearby. So it was affecting him a lot. It was damaging his relationship with his family as well. Not entirely his fault. It was a bit, but
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Look, I'm not expecting much of it." And bear in mind, it was more crude and unimpressive looking than what you're seeing here. But I said, "Look, just stick it on and see what you get. It costs you nothing." So
Yeah.
he does. And then we play a game for 10, 15 minutes. And I ask him, "So what, anything?" "Yeah, I can't feel a thing." "Are you joking?" "No, I feel good." And the biggest giveaway that he wasn't lying to me is he couldn't. because he's an atrocious actor.
Yeah.
He can't fake things to save his life, so I was convinced
Mm.
very quickly that he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
So then I shared this with friends of mine. I shared it with
Mm.
my brother, who hates it, but he's humorous enough that he can kind of get away with it.
Mm. Mm.
Passionately referred to by him as shit science. And I then gave it to the local florist who had injuries in both of her feet. One of them was severe, one of them less so. And the pain relief
Mm.
was as predicted. The one with severity faded from maybe 7 to 4. The other one
Mm.
faded from about 5 to 4, so less pronounced, but there wasn't that much to treat. And she
Mm.
felt quite good about it. I gave it to the man who ran the record store to see if it helped with his arthritis, which is it's our second most frequent feature because there's just a lot of it. And he said the
Mm.
pain was vastly reduced. I gave
Mm.
it to two girls who had juvenile arthritis in
Mm.
various places, knees, finger joints, stuff where one bone ends and another begins in particular. And they
Mm.
said the pain relief was noticeable. The older one even asked to take a picture with me, so I did. I was too stupid to ask to get one back. But,
Mm.
whether I was reading it wrong, it could have been flirtatious. Okay, I think at my
Mm.
state I probably wasn't looking back, but it was worth it and it was enjoyable.
Yeah.
Now, I couldn't give every example of people that I've helped. I helped another man with arthritis. I helped a girl with stomach issues of some description. She didn't specify. I
Mm.
helped. I gave it to two female friends of mine and said, "Well, we're getting great results here. Why don't you see if it stops
Mm.
menstrual cramping?" One of which had it very well, both of which had it very badly. So I gave it to the
Mm.
first one, and she said to me that it made the pain worse, and the reason why was she contained a copper IUD. You know what those are, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. For our audience, it's a type of contraceptive that is used to inhibit pregnancy and, in some cases, period pain. Now, while I'm still not a doctor, do some serious research there because there are a lot of stories of these things backfiring, and I don't just mean with my medicines, well, with my devices. So
Mm.
I said sorry, and we still get along just fine. It also turned
Yeah.
out that she suffers from endometriosis. So
What what is
uh,
that?
it's similar to endometriosis, which endometriosis is when what's it called? Ovarian tissue starts forming up in totally erratic areas. So it appears on the outside of the womb or in the connecting parts or places that it shouldn't, up to and including the
Mm.
stomach, the heart if
Mm.
left that unchecked, or the lungs, and those are dangerous. And
Yeah.
not to go too off topic, but it's very under researched and should get more attention, partly
Mm.
because it has overlaps with cancer in how it spreads. So, if research was poured into that properly, men would benefit most likely because we'd find out weaknesses when looking at the overlaps. And
Yeah.
I gave it to my other friend who had severe cramping, but nothing diagnosable. They were bad, but they could be called normal and run of the mill. And she said the pain went from 9 out of 10 to about 1, which
I
blew me
see.
away, because of the sheer number, that had to mean
Mm.
something. And
Mm.
just yesterday, my good colleague from Canada used it, said that the cramping faded a lot. And
Mm.
I haven't got an update on this yet. I'm just going to try and get one now. I should do this earlier, but I'll try and get one on the fly. Okay, they may or may not come back in time. I don't know. And,
Yeah.
in a lot of instances, I've been told that it seriously reduces that pain. And we've had interest from Kansas, Arizona.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of
Yeah.
traction over in New York, heavily.
Mm.
Canada joined in as of yesterday, or was it even this morning? I think it was yesterday.
Mm.
In Poland, Pakistan, maybe I'll be
Mm.
moving into Brunei soon. That's not been agreed, but I'm going to make an approach. Far and wide, we've seen it did not all cases. Sometimes it did nothing, We don't know exactly
Mm.
how it works. There are
Yeah.
circumstances in which you shouldn't use it. If it's been exposed to radiation poisoning or X-ray, as we explored, chuck it.
Mm.
If you're in an area such as Chernobyl or Fukushima, don't use it. If you're very
I'll keep.
close to an electrical plant or a nuclear plant, don't use it.
All right.
If you're in an extreme polluted urban area where it's not electrical or nuclear, but it's just extremely bad pollution, don't.
Mm. Don't. Okay.
If you are, if you've got a storm approaching and you're outside, don't use it.
Mm. All right. All right.
If you have a
That in mind.
copper IUD or some sort of implant, some metal implant, probably wouldn't use it. Fillings are okay, tooth fillings, no problems there.
All right. All right.
And
Keep that.
you may want to check the other instructions on the how to make a guide, but I believe that covers everything. So, but the indications
Mm.
are that it at least merits further analysis. I hope you agree. Any questions before we
Yeah.
continue? Because that was quite a bit.
I was wondering if the device has like an expiration date, or do they last forever?
As long as you store them properly, they're eternal. I can't. It's made out
Okay.
of cotton and metal, so
Okay. I see.
really, as long as they're assembled and managed properly, you could leave the thing for a century and not bat an eye.
Mm, mm, mm.
I mean, you'd probably die of old age, but you know.
Yeah. 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 Understand.
So the next bit does get a little distressing. Sorry for that. I
No problem.
so I had a very bad time of it in the early 20s, both in terms of age and just the 2020. I was born in 99, so they're heavily overlapped. And in summer of 2020, bear in mind, I was feeling quite low for unrelated reasons, just to put that into perspective. And I was approached by somebody who'd heard about what we were doing online, and she
Yeah.
confided in me that she was suicidally depressed because of back pain around there,
Mm.
just shy of the head neck region.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that gave me a fright, I'll be honest. I was not expecting it and was badly prepared for it emotionally. But I
Mm.
tried calming her down and talking her out of things and trying to like talk her out of some other worries unrelated to the pain. But we got to
Mm.
talking about the back pain. She said that she would like to get one and suggested buying one from me. And then
Yeah.
possibly I could go as far as mailing it to them. Now, side note, we don't
Mm.
mail them because if you put that into the post, it will get an x ray to scan for, contraband or
Mm.
danger. And the irony
Yeah.
is, x rays, if used extensively, are bad for you.
Mm.
But because of the
Yeah.
electromagnetic composition, this thing kind of retains the x ray. It sustains it, for want of a better description. So if you've
Yeah.
exposed this thing to that sort of stuff, chuck it. It's dangerous. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say lethal, but would do more harm than good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I began talking this girl down piece by piece, and it was very distressing. I was also
Yeah.
inexperienced, because of a very bad childhood. I didn't really know. I'd only been on the other side of it too few times. Somebody talking you down, helping you get better. It was 80%
Yeah.
the other way. So,
I understand.
it scared me, and this was in summer or late spring of 2022. And
Yeah.
I gave her the instructions. I said, okay, do this, this, and this to assemble it. And the worst
Mm.
part was neither of us talked about it because we didn't want to. It was just way too painful and too scary. We
Mm.
were cognizant of the fact there was room for that to become exploitative because this thing's not regulated medicine. So if I were to deny it, then what's anyone going to do to me in a court of law? And on top
Mm.
of that, at the time, almost no one knew about it. Through my actions, it's a
Yeah.
little bit more common knowledge nowadays, but it was no more needle in the haystack then than it currently is.
Mm.
So
Understand.
that was painful. Now, I didn't do anything malicious to her. I wouldn't. I don't have it in me to be that kind of person.
Yeah.
And the most painful bit of this was we've stayed in contact, right? Talking. So I found out
Yeah.
later through talking to her that she had an abusive relationship with her mother, had a
Yeah.
not so bad, but a fraught relationship with her father. And
Uh-huh.
judging by some of how she talked to me, or didn't, I
Yeah.
think that her mother might have caused the injury.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
could
I
be
see.
wrong. I hope to be. I hope it was just
Mm.
some random accident that didn't contain the sort of psychological horror that can come with physical injuries.
Yeah.
But, that puts it into perspective. And here's the really nasty part. So,
Mm.
it was only a few months ago she said to me, I'm glad to start college. Being in secondary school was getting painful. So then alarm bells began ringing in my head before I actually knew what to do with them. And I said, what's that about? Wait a minute. Well, if she's starting college now, she'd be 18, but we were talking 4 years ago, so shit.
Mm.
Then it occurred to me that it was bordering on. I don't want to describe it. I think you can see where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I
So,
understand.
again, I think you know from stuff that we've talked about, I'm not the type to kick a person while they're down. And
Yeah, I
the
agree.
point of me bringing this up in such painful detail is I want to make a
Mm.
point that when people ignore or misrepresent my branch of research, they're
Yeah.
creating more scenarios like that for me and for people who are
Yeah.
more unscrupulous than I am.
Yeah.
And we'll go into that a little bit more later, but she's doing quite well now. It was one of the
Yeah.
most uplifting things I've ever read when she talked about feeling better, being able to crack a smile or a joke. She got
Yeah.
excited. She took up bike riding as a means of
Mm.
socializing and having a life, which
Mm.
before,
Mm.
her summit of ambition was going up and down the stairs. That was her version of the Kilimanjaro.
Mm.
And it did a lot for me emotionally, and I didn't have a lot to be happy about in that time because, well, a lot of reasons, like a lot.
Yeah, I understand.
And, you know, you remember the guy I said earlier abused me when I was 14?
Mm.
I had another spell of good luck. He came back
Mm-hmm.
into my town and was dumb enough to
He
let me
came.
find him.
Mm.
So I outed him and I made it known to his family what he was like. And his
Mm.
daughter sided with me against him.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's real.
I've never caused anyone that much pain, and I don't think hurting
Mm.
him was unethical. I could have,
Yeah, because
yeah,
he wronged you, right?
I could have been more mindful of who was looking. I'll concede that, but I'm not going to express any regret over hurting him directly.
Mm.
And she helped me to work through some of that, helped me to get over it. Especially the next year, I got it in the neck off somebody who was being suicidally arrogant with me, like challenging me
Mm.
when it was just so objectively not a fight and they were completely in the wrong. And three out of
Yeah.
four people took her side against me.
Yeah.
And I also had to like stifle my anger. I wanted to let this bitch have it badly because she was deserving of it on so many levels. But I was in
Yeah.
the presence of a girl who was 12, timid, on the spectrum, and did not want to see me going at her full
Mm.
force, even though she knew I wasn't being unreasonable. She said as much.
Mm.
I didn't want her
Yeah.
to see that. So
Yeah.
I kept the anger inside and left, and my friend from Poland had to calm me down. And after the backstabbing, which was worse
Mm.
than what it was in relation to, I think she very
Mm.
much. I mean, there was no debt, but if there was a blood debt, then she returned it on that night.
Yeah. I see.
So from there, I didn't do a lot, to be honest, because I was just too busy staying alive. But then
Mm.
September of 2023 rolled around, and I did the biggest 180 ever. I got
Mm.
into shape, as you saw earlier. I
Yeah.
ate better. I worked harder.
Mm.
Near as damn it, every good thing I was doing it, and that included the ergonomic research. So at the yeah, I went far and wide. I went to a film night in Manchester, and I gave
Mm.
something like 10 or 15 ergonometers to as many people. Of the
Mm.
people that
Mm.
took it, some of them said, I'm going
Yeah.
to be giving it to friends, so they didn't have much to add, obviously. But of about
Yeah.
7 or 8 people that took it, every single one of them said they felt significant pain relief.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I retold things a bit like what I'm doing now after we watched 2 of my films.
Yeah.
And it was a great night out. I don't get
Mm.
out very often, but it was well worth it. I still remember one of the dudes there, I think was Norwegian. He was something like 6'10". And
Wow, that's really tall.
yeah, he said that his pain dropped by about half when it was sat at 7ish.
Mm, 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 mm.
So, there was when I was also feeling at my lowest in 2023, again, my Polish friend was single-handedly keeping me in it. I got an update
Yeah.
saying that use had started as far as Pakistan. Grandson had made
Mm,
it for his grandmother, and the old lady
yeah.
said that it made her leg pain go away. So the
Mm,
notion
mm,
of bringing help to a third world country where
mm.
medicine is harder to get hold of to begin with was very uplifting.
Yeah.
And since then, things are just they've been mostly going brilliantly. Any
Mm.
follow-up questions?
No follow-up questions.
Okay, great. So then in late 2025, I struck gold. I landed an
Mm,
interview with Trebles Garcia of the Trebles Show. It was at the time called Paranoid Radio. And
mm,
I
mm, mm,
recounted things, I recounted the history of my interactions up to that point. He
mm,
had the intention of creating one. Sadly, personal issues swamped him and he's been unable to do it through no fault of his own. But it's
mm.
still it's still something he's intent on doing when he can help it. He introduced me to
Yeah.
Bennett Tanton of Broadcasting Seeds, who uh,
Mm,
took many a note on it, and he works in peer support for veterans, talking people who have been through war and the horrors of the army through getting over it, how to
yeah.
get out of active service mode, how to get over perception of
Yes.
or real danger. I'm sure you get your head
Yes.
around that. And he
Mm,
said
mm,
to me, I'm quite interested because I work with people who have experienced
mm.
war injuries, bullets, bombs, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he organized together 5 people. Uh, 3 of them were combat veterans, and 2 of them were women experiencing cramping. I don't know if the women were in the military or not. It wasn't
Mm,
specified. So I'll seek
mm,
to look at that again. But
mm,
as with all sittings of a big nature,
mm,
Heiko Lassick, the Manchester evening, and this one,
mm.
the bulk walk. No, in fact, in the case of the Tanton experiments, everyone walked out feeling better. And we had things like
Yeah.
cyanitis and headaches, traumatic brain injury,
Mm.
osteoarthritis, and 2 cases
Yeah.
of cramping. Every single one of them said, and I know it's still anecdotal at current, the pain
Yeah.
reduced
Yeah.
by an average of 40 to 50%.
Yeah. I see.
And I'm seeking to levy some help with them in New York, see if they'll offer some help to a friend of mine. I'll give you one guess who, but please don't actually say it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And is that everything? I think it might be. So then we come to this year, and David Icke went back on tour, so I had one custom made with his face on it, attempted to give it to him in person. Couldn't. Gave
Mm,
it to his daughter, his surviving one. He lost one a few years ago, which is terrible. I didn't know until recently. And
mm.
she said she'd pass it on. Sadly, I've heard no updates. I tried to frame it as you stand to gain here by talking about this. Give yourself a leg up by associating yourself with it. So there was a value proposition. Sadly,
Mm, mm.
nothing came of that, but it was worth trying. And
Yeah.
for wasn't even looking for it, but my PTSD 2 cases, they faded quite a
Mm,
lot. I got one from that sicko who I outed, another from that girl who I was supporting from Poland. It's not
yeah.
her fault, of course.
Mm,
I'm very happy to know her, but
mm.
you know, it affected me. But listening to Ike and his philosophy and his research on the human mind, it helped me to sort of
Mm.
psych myself out of it and watered the symptoms down. And
Yeah.
again, I wasn't even looking for it.
I see.
So that was precious to have. Now, it's such a big story. I may have forgotten something there, but I think that covers. Oh yeah, the how to create it. We'll get to that in a second. Any follow-ups?
No follow-ups.
Okay. Well, in the case of how to create one, I would assume there are people in your life that to a greater or lesser degree could benefit from one of these.
Yeah, I can name one or two.
Great. Well, we have a how-to guide online, which is quite dated. I had one ready to go. I had the bolt in the chamber, but this stupid piece of shit deleted it within 5 hours or 4 hours of me needing it. So I've been
Yeah.
remaking the thing from scratch, much to my own frustration. But
Mm.
nevertheless, I've got one coming. It is going to be out in the coming days, and I've got another one that's a bit crude but gets the job done.
Yeah.
And the instructions how to create one are available to anybody. Uh,
Mm.
if you've got the budget of about, what do they trade in your country? Euros?
Norwegian krones.
Okay, what's £10 in krones? Can you do that?
10 pounds in krones is like 110 krones. So it's like 11 times.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's just say 10
Yeah.
English pounds. If you've got the equivalent of that, then you can create one of
Mm.
these things. I mean, this is
Yeah, that's cheap.
assembled from things you get from the hardware store, the grocery store, and at a push, the arts and
Mm.
crafts store. If you go to those three, then you'll have everything you need to create this.
Mm.
So assembly is cheap, it's easy, and the crucial part is I don't profit if you follow my instructions and create one and pass it on to somebody. I don't make any
Right.
money out of that.
Mm.
Now, for the sake of disclosure, sometimes I have accepted money in exchange for an organometer off of people who were
Yeah.
financially stable, who wanted to enable me to do more of the same, and who
Mm.
wanted, you know, to keep my ball rolling, put it that way. I've never,
Mm.
as I pointed out, I'm not the type to extort somebody, and if they're strapped for cash, it's a case of just take it.
Yeah, I understand.
So, we have instructional support on the creation, and it can be
Mm.
done in the span of about an hour for 10 quid. And have you any skepticism over like why you shouldn't believe in it? Because I'm always open to valid complaints or worries.
Not really. I'm very open to new ideas. So there's nothing right now that makes me skeptic about it, no?
Brilliant.
Yeah. I kind of just want to try and see if it works.
Okay,
It's as
great.
simple
Well,
as that.
I'll link to you the how-to video.
Yeah.
All in all, I think thanks. That covers the full story. So, what's your synopsis across the board of the history of it and what I've done with it?
I think that it's really interesting that like you felt really curious about something that was seen as obscure, and it made you like follow up and do all these things. So I kind of want to see what it has in store for me too, since you're so interested in it.
Brilliant. Oh yeah, I skipped over a bit here. I mentioned
Mm.
detractors. Now, I've had detractors. I've got one that I talk to regularly who's very much on the other side of the fence, but you can actually have a conversation with him and have it go somewhere. So he's well worth having, you know.
Mm.
Uh, and many times he's kind of helped me to understand how much I lost to my abusive education. Not to make it into a, not to drag it off topic, but 8 to 10 years
Mm.
old, I was top of the class and I could hold my own against anybody. About
Yeah.
2 years later, I was bottom of the class, not because I suddenly became stupid, but because the treatment was that bad.
Yeah, I
So he's
understand.
helped me to kind of claw that back and take a second look at
Yeah.
college. I'm not doing full courses, but I want to give it some second thought,
Yeah.
see what I can land.
Mm.
Then in the case of one detractor who was against me, he again, this guy had nothing to say, right? He was just a tantrum throwing idiot who was bitter at the idea of what I was saying, as we pointed out.
Mm.
And then when I actually started
Mm.
talking to him, I could tell he was getting frightened of me because I upstage people by
Yeah,
accident a lot of the time. That sounds narcissistic, really isn't. Trust.
I understand.
And he was just being a complete pissant. And at one point, he blurted out to me, I feel like if you'd lost people to cancer, you'd not be willing to talk about it so cheaply. Just one moment. And then went on about how he lost his granddad to it, as if that gives him some sort of free license to either talk with authority or start throwing around bitterness. Aside from the
Yeah.
fact that I had to talk a 15-year-old who is like a little sister to me out of suicide for it wasn't
Mm.
cancer but still medical reasons,
Yeah.
what would I know about losing people to cancer? I can't imagine.
Yeah, I understand.
So, it says everything about that little hothead that he said that. But the
Yeah.
thing that offends me more so even than the fact he said something quite cheap about my father, which, to be half fair, he didn't know, but it's not like he was trying to understand. Well,
Yeah.
as I pointed out, what he doesn't know, and I think he'd just stick his fingers into his ears if it was explained to him, when he does
Yeah.
that, when he derides my research and has a go at me and mischaracterizes it and like plays bingo card with the symptoms of bad research and irresponsible thinking, he's opening the
Mm.
door for more scenarios like what happened to my Polish friend. So I hope he feels good giving a leg up to every
Mm.
exploitative man out there, because that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
He's pathetic. And if you can believe it, his partner's even worse.
Yeah.
I don't even want to describe what she said to me.
Mm.
Well, I think that's a full story. So, going forward, do you think that when you have a free hand, you might assemble one of these things and offer it up to somebody who could benefit?
Yeah, when I have a free hand and when someone asks me for help, if they're in pain, I would definitely go to this device.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. And I'd love
It's
to,
been a pleasure.
yeah, I'd love any potential updates on production, if any, because I'd love to break into Norway. It's always a pleasant surprise to get into a new nation.
Yeah,
Spain, Canada, US, Poland, Pakistan, England. I think
yeah,
that's
yeah.
everybody so far.
I'll update you if I got anything.
All right, thank you so much. And if you can believe it, my computer actually recorded all of this.
That's fantastic.
All
I
right,
really enjoyed this session today, so thank you for taking the time to explain to me.
me too. It's been great.
Mm,
You can delete your
It's been
recording if you wish.
all right. I'll do that now.
Thanks, solid. All
All
right,
right, Professor O.
video will come out in
Have a
time. I'll seek to get a few people shifted onto your channel.
yeah. Okay, fantastic.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'll see you around.
See you around. Have a nice day. Bye
Yeah.
bye.